Change makers, and welcome to The Core, sponsored by Red Apple EdCo. This is your Everything Education podcast. We talk about current events, books to read. We interview education leaders, hear their stories, learn from their biggest lessons, and they share what they wish you knew about what it means to be in education today. I'm your host, Dr. Kia Turner. Buckle up for small seeds of inspiration that can lead to big changes in your classroom practice. Let's take a bite out of today's guest. Hey, you guys, it is Dr. Kia here, still at the Amplify conference this weekend in Kansas City. And at my latest session on unconscious bias, I met Leticia Dowling, and I knew I had to get her on the blog. You know, I said that about everybody, but I had to get her on the vlog because she's doing amazing work in education and has a really interesting backstory about how you came to now work as a funder, right?
As an operations manager with Grantmakers for Education.
She's an operations manager with Grantmakers for Education, which is a education funding network. Okay, so there you go. Tell us a little bit about how you traveled from classroom teacher to working in the role that you have now. 90 seconds. How'd you do it?
So I taught for about 9 years in a very rural classroom in critical needs subject in middle school, high school math, and social studies. After teaching there, went to Washington, D.C. for a more urban setting and eventually became a school leader at a charter school for teenage mothers.
Oh, wow.
And after that experience, went on to another charter school in Southeast D.C., which was a very different experience for me coming from a very rural environment. Knew absolutely nothing about the city, but was able to be successful as an educator in both the rural environment and the urban environment. After that experience, I landed a role with a nonprofit for teacher development and started there as an operations manager again. And because of my success in that role, ventured into becoming a director of that program to oversee teacher development and to work with state leaders on certification policies in the South. And then after that experience, went on to the philanthropy side of education, where I'm now an operations manager for Funder Network.
Look at that. So the reason I wanted Leticia to sit down is exactly because of what she just said. There are so many teachers who think, man, what can I do besides work in the classroom? And what I hear you saying is that you sort of took some very decisive steps and decided to become a coach, but maybe not a coach in the traditional sense, a coach with a network or an organization, and then leverage that coaching experience to move further into the nonprofit side of education. And that is amazing. So you guys know I use Screencastify Lite. So in 10 minutes or less, now 8, we are going to get to know everything we can about Leticia. And then at the end, I'll tell you how to connect with her if you're interested in finding out more of her story. And I'll do a bio for her in the Educators You Need to Know section of the blog. Okay. So question one I always ask, why do you teach? Or for you, why do you continue in the education space? What's the battery in your back?
Gotcha. So I came from a family of educators.
Oh,
my mom was a teacher. Her sisters were teachers. I have a cousin who was a superintendent. Growing up in a family of education is all you hear, eat, and breathe.
Yeah.
But I went to college. I was determined I was never going to do it. But I think I am that classic story of it kind of got into my blood. And I did find my niche, and I went into the classroom through an alternate route. I did not go to college to become a teacher. So I went back in through an alternate route program. And I will honestly say that I struggled through that program only because I felt like some of the things being taught was a little irrelevant. But after I got into the classroom with my kids, that was awesome for me. It was everything for me to just be able to connect with them. And in most cases, I enjoyed most connecting with those kids who were at risk, didn't like the classroom. They were the reason why I woke up every day and went to teach. And so I continue in education now just because of my passion for making certain that kids have the right teachers, teaching them the right thing and really invested in the children and not the system or the paycheck. And so I've been in education and staying around education just to make certain that there are the right systems to put those right people in place.
I love that. I feel that you're saying pretty much you understand how transformative a quality education can be, and you want to, through family lineage or not, make sure that students have access to that quality, life-changing education. That's amazing. So question 2, what is one thing you are doing in your practice or seeing in your practice right now that excites me? Kind of a wave or a movement in education at this time that you're like Bring it on.
So after coming through the ranks of just a lot of educational positions, from being, I would say, on the ground in education, then in leadership as a principal, then back in the development side, and now on the funder side, I realized that there's a gap and a disconnect of when you are a funder and may not have been a practitioner and may not have been in the classroom, your perception of the needs, your perceptions of the gaps are not really grounded in what's really going on. So as now that I'm in the philanthropy side, I'm realizing that there are not a lot of practitioners sometimes in that space and in that work. So as often as possible, I understand what they're trying to fund. I understand what they're looking at. I try to understand their lens and where their perceptions are, but I'm able to add that personable knowledge of having been a teacher, been a school leader, been in teacher development to kind of sometimes close those gaps or to spin their thinking of how they're funding and how they're looking at what's really going on in the education landscape.
See, so those of you who are looking for your value add outside of the classroom, please know there's room for you in the nonprofit side of education. So consider that. So thing 3, what's one resource you think every educator, no matter what, should definitely know about?
One resource I think every educator should know about is just the skills that you are developing in the classroom. No matter how tedious, how burnt out you may feel as an educator, like those skills are super valuable and super critical across any field, in any position. It's just knowing how to describe those skills and how to translate those skills into other work. But I learned being a teacher, like that is the battleground, that is the boot camp for any other position. If you can manage to teach children of any age and teach any subject 8 hours a day, as many days as you're in the classroom, you are equipped to do almost anything else in any other profession.
So maybe the resource is the value of their own resume and the power of their own experience.
It's the value of your resume, the power of your experience. I would say more so, we know that a resume is limited. So outside of what you put on the paper, it's also the power of how you tell your story.
Ooh. Okay, which brings me to number 4. What was your last aha moment as a professional?
My last aha moment as a professional is coming from the classroom. I always devalued those skills. And so when I was looking to get out of the classroom, I looked for administrative positions. I looked for those low-level positions because I just didn't value my skills. And what happened is when I did get those positions, because, I had more than I thought I did, and the hiring manager saw that, I realized that once I got into those positions, I quickly excelled and was often promoted to those higher level positions that I myself didn't apply for. And so my aha moment was, you really have more than you think you have. And so you need to really sell that and value that and go for the top and not always the bottom, just because you had a label as a classroom teacher.
I love that. So then in a few words, which brings us to 5, what's one message you want to put out there to every educator, especially at a conference like this where we're talking about amplifying voice? What's one message you want to put out there about education or to educators?
Gotcha. One message that I have learned personally and I've seen across the board is we understand our education system in the United States for what it is. There are a lot of certification requirements. There are a lot of experience requirements to move from one level to the next. And once you're in, especially the public school system, you primarily think that that's how things are. And that system burnt me out because it's like, I don't want to teach for 7 years before I can then be considered for a principal and then have to do that for another 8 or 9 years before being a superintendent. So it was looking for those other leadership opportunities based upon 2-3 years in the classroom. I led a classroom of 30 individual personalities effectively. If I can lead those 30 middle school students effectively through the classroom to the cafeteria in a straight line and keep them quiet and manage the classroom, I can lead in any other capacity without having to stay in a classroom for 7 years and then promote up. So it's just realizing that other side of the skills and your experiences. And if that public, whatever system you're in, is not advancing fast enough, but you know that you're ready for it, it's a matter of stepping outside of that box, stepping outside of that rigid system and finding another system that will embrace what you already have and run with it.
Absolutely. Ooh, yeah. And in 15 seconds, if anyone wants to reach out to you, maybe connect with you, maybe get some advice from you, how do they find you? You want them to do it LinkedIn? You got Twitter? What you want?
So right now, I only have a Facebook page, and my Facebook page is Leticia Dowling.
That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to The Core. Wherever you are listening to us, be sure to like our show, subscribe, and share the episode that's meant the most to you. We appreciate every single one of our subscribers, as do our sponsors. We look forward to seeing you next week. You can also check us out on YouTube at Red Apple Edco if you'd like to see more video of these conversations. We have them posted there.